tip of my periscope, and that's this box right here. In the back is a bright white light. We have polarized film on this back panel, and more polarized film on the front panel. Now, you guys aren't seeing any stress or anything in the bottle, and that's because of how they're made. In their initial production, they go through a slow cooling process known as annealing. With annealing, we put the glass through an oven slowly enough so that all those atoms kind of relax together, and that eliminates any stresses that get left in the glass. So if I fire the torch up again and heat a little spot on the glass here, you guys will start to notice a pattern of light and dark building up on the glass. That's stress. The area that's being heated is trying to expand, but again, the cold glass around it doesn't allow that to happen. And we see stress as the result of that. Now, as I'm talking about stress, I'm really concerned with two different types. Plastic behaves really similarly to glass. As it's heated, it wants to expand. As it cools, it wants to contract. Now, how many of you guys out there have broken one of these? I would imagine most of us. So we all know that CD cases are really fragile, right? But what most people don't realize is it's because they're loaded with stress. All the color in there is stress in the plastic, and that comes from how they're made. Hot plastic is poured into a mold, then once it's formed, it's left in the open air to cool. In the open air, it cools unevenly.
No.
Thicker areas hold heat for a long time, while thin areas cool and contract quickly. So we end up with different parts of the plastic contracting at different rates, and that results in a whole lot of stress. And now the reason I show you guys that with a piece of chemical composition is the first two, but it gets treated a little differently. Once it's in its final size and shape, they reheat it just so it starts to soften. And as soon as it softens, they stop heating it and blast it with cold jets of air from both sides at the same rate. This causes the outer surface to cool and contract quickly, forming that really strong compression stress. But in doing so, it traps a whole lot of tension stress on the inside. So with the tempered glass, we see a lot more in the Polaris dome. That being said, that tempered glass is still about 5 times stronger than those first two because of that compression stress on the outside. And lastly, we have a Bologna Vial. These are named after the city of Bologna in Italy, where they were first discovered. And it's basically just a hollow, egg-shaped bulb of glass. And we actually make these here at the museum. Our hot glass team will just gather some molten glass on the end of a blowpipe, puff some air into it, then hold it at a downward angle so gravity forms that egg shape. And then as it's cooling, they can just tap the back of the blowpipe, and that vibration is enough to knock it off. Then just like the CD case, they leave it in the open air to cool, so it cools unevenly. We end up with a pretty similar stress pattern as we have in the CD case. Now, there isn't really any practical application for these Bologna vials, but as you guys will see in a moment, they make for a pretty compelling demonstration. So now for the fun part, where we break this glass. So I'll start with the standard window glass, give it a little shock, and we'll see how it holds up. Not all that well, right? Now, if any of you have broken glass before, it's probably broken a lot like this. We end up with these unpredictable little shards that can be pretty sharp and dangerous. So while annealed glass is strong, we don't want to use it in everything because of how it breaks. We certainly wouldn't want to use it for the windshield of our cars, for instance. At our driving speeds, it would only make those shards that much more dangerous. So for that, we would want to use the laminated or safety glass. So we'll see how that holds up. All right, a little bit better. Now keep in mind, this is just 2 of those same sheets of window glass. So when it fragments, we get pretty similar shards, sort of sharp, unpredictable pieces. But because of that layer of plastic in the center, it's all held together, so it's much safer. We use that same technology for bullet-resistant glass. Simply adding more and thicker layers of glass and plastic can actually be enough to stop a bullet. And now for the tempered glass. Keep in mind, this one's 5 times stronger than the first 2, so we'll see how it does. Not all that well, huh? Well, I guess at this point, I should probably let you all know that because it is the glass breaking demonstration, we want to break all the glass for you. So we cheat just a little bit with this one. On the end of my rod here is a sharp point. That sharp point allows me to pierce through that outer layer of compression stress, accessing all that really weak tension stress. And when I do that, it shatters really uniformly. And we get this sort of cubic pattern within the shards. And it's so blunt that I can run my finger on the edge and not cut myself. So we use tempered glass for things that need to be really strong, but if they break in as safe a manner as possible. So that's things like shower doors, the backboard of a basketball hoop, as well as all the side and rear view windows of our cars. And lastly, that brings me to the Bologna Vial. I'm gonna come at this one a little bit differently. I'm gonna strike it from above and we'll see how it holds up. Yeah, it's a really tough piece of glass. I might have scratched it, maybe chipped it a little bit, but that's really all I expect to do. And there's two reasons for that. The main reason is how it cools. It cools in the open air, so that outer layer cools first, forming that really strong compression stress. And the second reason is the shape. Architecturally speaking, the egg shape is really structurally sound. If you've ever tried to break an egg from end to end, then you know that the physics don't really allow it. But there is a secret with the Bologna Vial. We have a little hole at the bottom there. That hole allows me to access the interior surface. So I have this thinner wire here, I'll line it up with that hole and drop it through and see what happens. It shatters really easily. Now again, the reason for that is how it cools. That outer layer cools first, forming that really strong compression stress, but the inside surface and the thicker areas still hold heat. So as they're cooling, they're trying to contract, but they can't because they're stuck to that already hardened outer layer. So it's kind of like a rubber band. It's getting pulled more and more taut until all it takes is one little touch, and that's enough to get it to pop. Now at the end of our Bologna Vial, we have also reached the end of our glass breaking demonstration. If you guys have any questions, please feel free